Hi folks, welcome back to the garden. It's one of my days off, and surprise surprise, the weather forecast is threatening rain again. Typical. But hey, a gardener's work is never done, so let's get cracking and make the most of the dry spells before those showers hit. Today's diary entry is all about prepping for the future, whether it's saving bean seeds for next year's crops or planting bulbs for a glorious spring display. First up, a big thank you to Billy Bowen for the tips about bringing my French beans indoors to dry. We're at the bean arch. These French beans have been amazing this year when they finally took off, giving us loads of delicious pods. But they've also got another important job, providing seeds for next year. With this damp weather rolling in, it's time to bring them indoors to dry properly. If we leave them out here, they'll likely rot before we can harvest those precious seeds. We're going to hang these beauties upside down in the polytunnel. This will allow for good air circulation and prevent any mould from forming as the pods dry out. Once they're completely dry, we'll collect the seeds and store them carefully until it's time to sow them next spring. Okay, onto the front garden. Remember those sweet peas that were putting on such a show here all summer? Well, it's time to make way for some spring superstars, daffodils and tulips. I've gone for two varieties. Narcissus Falconette, which has these lovely cheerful yellow flowers with orange centres, and Tulip Escape, a vibrant red that should really pop. I love planting bulbs in autumn. It's like burying little treasures that promise a burst of colour when the world is still waking up from winter. Plus, when these beauties start blooming, it's my signal to get going with sowing my summer crops. It's like a natural gardening calendar. I'm putting them in at a depth of about 3 times their own height. The soil doesn't need any amendments because it got loads of nutrients left from the homemade compost and wood chips put down each year. Next on the list is sowing broad beans. Now, I'm usually a direct sow kind of gardener, but with the mice and birds constantly on the lookout for a tasty snack, I'm taking extra precautions this time. We're going to start them off in these deep modules. This will give them a head start and hopefully prevent them from becoming a feathered or furry feast before they even have a chance to establish. Once they're big enough, we'll plant them out in their final spot in November at about 5 centimetres deep. I'm also making use of what remains of this year's bought compost, sieving it into the modules. Poking some finger holes in. Broad beans are probably the easiest veg to grow. You don't have to worry what way up they're planted. The roots will always find the dark, and the shoots will always look for the sun. Right, that's them in. Just give a good soak. And put on the hot bed bench to germinate. Last but not least, it's time to get some garlic in the ground. Garlic is a kitchen staple, and there's nothing quite like the flavour of homegrown. Now, for planting, we need to separate the cloves, making sure to keep the pointy end facing up. It's getting a bit difficult to separate them these days. I've lost some strength in my wrists. Nonetheless, I've managed to get a good 20 segments to plant out. 22. I've selected a spot in the garden, which I'm not likely to use for some of my early plantings next year. Garlic is one of those crops I get anxious waiting to finish, as I'm always looking for empty beds when they're still bulbing up. I like to make 2-inch deep holes about 6 inches apart and pop the cloves in nice and gently. I'll do both ends of the bed, trying to use up as little main garden space as possible. Then, we'll just cover them up with some of this lovely compost left over from sowing the broad beans. Give a good soaking. As always, supervised by the girls. And there we go. Another 4 jobs ticked off the list, and hopefully we've beaten the rain. It's amazing how much you can get done in a short amount of time when you put your mind to it. Thanks for taking an interest in what is really just my gardening diary. Your tips have been amazing and are really helping me grow as a gardener. So, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future garden updates. Leave a comment if you enjoyed the video, or even if you didn't. All feedback actually is appreciated. And I'll be back soon with more gardening adventures, hopefully with a bit more sunshine next time. So for now, thanks for watching and see you soon.